I'm very, very sneaky. All right, welcome guys. How are we enjoying the last day of HubCon?
Good, wow.
Yay! Winning. All right, so one of the really important aspects and big parts of a convention is definitely comic artists. And, you know, we see authors, we see the retail area there, but the comic artists, I think, are really one of the biggest and best and most fun part of any con, especially if you end up going for drinks with them afterwards. Would you agree?
Don't take me drinking.
And we are very fortunate here at HubCon to have some very, very talented people and talking about their passion, their love, and their craft. So give it up for our comic creators today. And for the panel, would you like to just have an open conversation and take questions, or have you got something rigidly planned? Also, this is a conversation we probably should have had before you handed me the mic, and I just went with it.
Shh, I can hear you.
Use your inside voice. But you know what, that's the great thing about HubCon that you don't get at a lot of other cons is the closeness that those intimate conversations that you can have about your work one-on-one. So if you go to some of the bigger cons, what you find is there's it's always sensory overload and there's a rush and you've always got stuff to do, whereas here you can take a step back and we can have those open conversations and explore things a little bit more, and that's part of the joy of HubCon. So I think I will hand over to you guys and I will sit back and enjoy what will come forth.
Do you have some popcorn?
I love popcorn. Incidentally, I've discovered that out there they have cheese sticks. Have you seen that? I didn't know what they were. And I went, oh yeah, I'll have some of that. It's actually just a bit of cheese that's crumbed and they just deep fry it. It's like 3 different types of fat all in one. It's brilliant. Yeah, I was so full my soul was happy. It's just like when I read your comics. So yeah. So let's hand over to you guys. We might quickly go through each of your backstories and histories. And then what we can do is open up to questions or possibly drive it as the conversation as it unfolds, because there is much information in each of these brains that we wish to squeeze and extract out. All right. Don't worry, it won't hurt.
There's not much in there. So my name's Kellie. I'm a self-published comic book artist. I only started about 8 months ago. And my training comes from fine arts, and then I went into graphic design. I opened up my own business about 10 months ago, and I just found that I was getting a lot of corporate work, which is great, pays the bills, but I needed something creative, I needed something fun. And living in the Blue Mountains, we are living in a very creative, inspiring, and as per my comics, a pretty spooky place as well. I love the folklore around here, and I wanted to immortalize our myths and legends as superheroes, which is my other passion. I love it. So started doing this on the side, got it all printed locally as well, and then I just approached some local bookshops and they snapped it up, and it's just gone bananas. Then Tim approached me and he went, "You doing another one?" I went, "I can." And he went, "I'm doing HubCon in 3 months. Do you reckon you have another one ready by then?" Oh, yeah. So I just launched my second one yesterday, and thanks to you guys, it's gone bananas too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Jason Poulos. I'm a Blackheath-based comic book artist and illustrator. I moved to Sydney in 1989. Became an economic refugee, hence the move 7 years ago to Blackheath, which then facilitated, basically, I was a graphic designer for a long time, but I self-published my own comics part-time, moonlighting along the way. I brought my first issue of Hairbutt the Hippo Private Eye as a photocopied mini comic out in June 1989, and I took it around to the local Sydney stores and gradually built up, several more issues, selling them at the early HubCon conventions, which some people here might remember. HubCon. You do know that? I turned 50 last week, so you'll have to excuse the sentimental posturing. Along the way, as well as working as a graphic designer and publishing comics, hadn't had kids yet. That's another story. That's a big mistake. No, I'm kidding. Along the way, I've managed to score some international gigs for DC Comics, Judge Dredd magazine, Heavy Metal magazine, Mad magazine, Australian Mad magazine, and so a career sort of formed around my activities, sort of almost by accident, because we didn't have the internet then, so any jobs you got were sort of accidental word of mouth type things. Though I did send an email to Joey Cavalieri, editor of Superman, and he said, randomly out of the blue, I don't know how he got his email, I've got his email address. Don't give him out. And he replied incredibly and said, I'm a fan of Headbutt the Hippo, I've got one of them, or two of them, and can you draw a Green Lantern story? And I'm like, yes, I can. So they paid me with a DC Comics check that had the Justice League printed on it.
Oh, wow.
I copied that, got that in my studio. And that was the last DC job I ever got. I then found out that 15, 20 years on, that's not really how it works. The jobs just don't come rolling in. But I was busy self-publishing, once again, and occasionally the odd high-profile gig would happen, though it all came from being an indie comic book publisher. And here I am. I'm currently working for the Phantom. That's one of the recent issues there. Pass them around. There's 2 Phantom comics and my self-published Eek series, which was repackaged by indie US publisher Asylum Press recently. Over to you, Darren.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Darren Gallagher. I started my indie comic company in 2012, and I've been very fortunate to have only done nothing but that since. That is my lifeblood. I gave up a high-paying corporate job that I didn't enjoy, and I've managed to sustain a slightly more than 2-minute noodle income for that period of time. But it's been a really good exercise, and I actually wrote sci-fi novels as well. And one of the things that these guys will know as well as I do, that was one of the first comics I did. And as shameful as this is, I wrote a muscle car comic series so I could tax deduct the restoration of my 1968 job. As I built a promotional vehicle, sir, for my comic book company. And so that is the most disgracefully legal thing I've ever done. And it was great. And then the next thing you know, I started writing sci-fi novels as well, because when you're on the move, you find and these guys, you're drawing all the time. And that's one of the nice parts about being part of this industry, is you can kind of work everywhere. And so writing was just another way to fill the hole, because while I was driving I couldn't draw, so I'd be thinking about the storyline. And you pick up all that dead time, that dead time when you're sitting at the doctor's waiting for the doctor, and you're getting angry because my appointment was at 12:30, what time was your appointment? And I'm next to the guy, I don't care, I'm just working here, I'll go in when the doctor sees me. And commuting time, and all that dead time we have, 20 minutes early picking the kids up from school, all of that time now, I work in. And so it becomes, I'm not sure whether you're working too much or you're not working enough, but when you're creating product, it just kind of rolls into this really lovely, I could do that, I can't do that in enough time. I'll shelve that idea for 20 minutes and then maybe I'll come back to it. Or 2 days, or 2 years, or 20 years. And then even just for my own interest sake, creativity and creating original stuff, and I actually had a headbutt the hippo. I had one a long time ago. I think I might have imported it as common. When you said it, I was going, wait a minute, I have that. This helmet here I built out of EVA foam, like those foam mats you do karate on, they link together. You buy them from Bunnings. It's just flooring mat. Super glue and a Stanley knife and a game of AFL to watch while I was doing it. And suddenly you create something new. That's why I brought it in, is that originality is so much product and people are creating so much stuff that to come up with an idea that's new, that no one's done, is actually quite hard. And so then you find yourself, it rolls into this ridiculous snowball. So I'm very grateful to have been doing this and only this for the last 7 years. So it's, I think I'm very lucky to be in the industry. I think, sustainably. Yeah.
Yes, Darren.
You are lucky.
I'm special. My mum's separate.
I actually anticipated that to be a conduit to a greater conversation, but that's okay. That's okay. So, actually, you know what?
Technology. Here for
We'll
you.
have a duet.
Lovely. A duet with 4 people.
If you do Islands in the Stream, I'm just throwing my wallet in.
Yeah, mine's empty.
So's mine.
Oh, well, it's worth more than what's in it. So self-publishing is such a really big thing, and the thing I love about that in a small market like Australia is that as a creator, you can hone your own skills and get feedback from it, and more importantly, back your own horse. And that, I believe, would enable these stories and those skills to develop. So, you've got a fine arts degree. Did you ever think you'd use it?
Nope. I thought I was going to work at Macca's all my life, but no, I entered the Archibald and never get in, but that's what I was keeping myself doing to keep creative.
Yeah.
I went out on a limb and started my own graphic design business. And then, as I said, I was getting restless with the corporate income that was coming in. And I love the monsters around here. I thought it was something that I myself would buy, and I was quite sad to see that there was nothing about the Drop Bear that I couldn't have a Drop Bear t-shirt, I couldn't have a Yowie t-shirt, I couldn't have a Blue Mountains Panther cup or tea towel. And I just went, well, I can make one for myself.
Yeah. Have you thought about a Blue Mountains cougar?
That's my mum.
You look different to your photos.
But yeah, I started talking with people about, I've always loved comic books, and I was like, maybe this is something that I could do. The thing that, as I said, I only started recently, I've got the benefit of Facebook and Instagram, social media branches that, connect me to a couple of hundred people here, there, that. If you start hashtagging stuff in my style, like paranormal, ghost hunters, Blue Mountains Panther, people latch on. And then when I started, okay, I'm gonna do this comic book, I was, okay, this might actually have some feet underneath it. I'll print off 50 and see how I go. And then I opened up an eBay and an Etsy store, both again, really cheap to run, really easy to run. These are selling, okay, weird. And then Odd Mountain in Katoomba, they contacted me and went, we want your stuff. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And then from there, I started approaching other bookstores. And since then, today they're like coming up to me going, have you got that comic book ready for us yet? I know you only launched it yesterday, but we want it. And it's, I get to control who's selling my stuff. I get to control how much I'm printing, but I never anticipated how quickly it would roll on. And it's just been amazing. The last 8 or 9 months have just been phenomenal.
So, as a comic creator, what sort of value have you seen from your more traditional fine arts background in translating that across to comics?
It's quite interesting. I've always loved drawing, and I've always had a more of a cartoonish quality to my work. But I was having a chat with Darren this morning, and I was like, oh no, like for instance, my character here, Carl, who's also my fiance here in the front row, I know his face consists of 18 lines, but I also know.
So after you're married, after you're married, you'll have a lot more than 18 lines.
Yeah. What I'm saying. But like I can draw people quite quickly, and it came in handy when I was doing like I think this one consists of 78 cells, and I needed to bash it out in about 3
Sorry,
months.
you're talking about the comic, not your partner.
Yeah, no. So
Okay, good. Sorry, no, I was trying to just clarify.
He might have a few less chromosomes, but he's all right cellularly.
Cellular integrity is good.
So you've got that going for you.
And I love that you're sitting one seat away from the in-laws as well.
But yeah, it comes in handy. I think when you have to repeat a character, when you have to draw someone very familiar to you, but yeah, 70 odd times. If you just keep drawing, and as you said, if you just, in the doctor's surgery, you're just having a little sketch here, or if you're on the phone and you're just doodling away. I normally, each cell takes me about 2 hours, and it just sort of, yeah, if you can just pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down, it never gets boring. It never gets boring. It's just been fantastic. Yeah.
All right, so the larger question to everyone, we're talking about creating comics and creating the world in which those comics are set. How important is creating a story and a comic series that enables you to leverage merchandise outside of the core comic to help sustain yourself as a true independent and Australian artist?
One of the things that I was very conscious of when I was doing comics was exactly that, the shelf life of your product.
Yeah.
And that was a really big thing for me, was to, when you make something and if it's got a very small window, let's say you're going to make a short film, you might outlay $5,000 to make this short film, but then you're sweating bullets and you put that with your screenplay and you give it to the producer. Maybe the producer takes the 2 seconds to put it in the DVD player, or maybe they don't. And so there's no return on your investment. You've got a lot of time, a lot of outlay, a lot of capital. One of the things I was very conscious of when I started in the industry was how I can multi-fit, multi-attach everything so I get a return on every investment. One of the reasons I started with car comics is I wrote my business plan at the very beginning. And my market, I don't want to compete for the $10 a young kid has because he doesn't have or she doesn't have very much money. That's a market. That's a market I can't fight as an independent guy. So I asked myself a question: who's got cash? Hot rod guys, car guys and car girls. They'll spend in the middle of the economic downturn. There's still cars, hot rods getting trimmed in the local trimmer. They don't care. They're just feeding cash out like this. So my market for comics was never comic people.
So it was people with
Cars.
money and a poor cognitive ability to make
Sure.
good decisions.
So follow me for a moment. So instead of going to find my people, I just go to a car show, tax deduct my own car, drive there, sit around all day at the car show, which I would do anyway because I'm a car guy, except now I'm selling comics. And my comic car show crowd, my comic readers who are not comic people, they're a captive audience because they can't leave before 12 either. They've either seen all the cars there once they've done their lap and they're bored, so they buy this because it's nothing to them compared to this $3,000 carburetor they just bought.
But it's shiny.
Yeah. And here's the cool part. They're probably going to throw it away, which means I'm not competing with my own comics on the second-hand market. They'll read it like a magazine and they'll ditch it, which means I'm not competing with my own product. So that was the first part of my business plan. The second part was that I've also got the father who's got the kids and he wants to buy himself 10 minutes more looking at cars before they leave. Dad, I'm bored. Here, because no one's selling anything for kids at car shows either. Now, the kids don't like comics, but the father's positively geared to them on a nostalgic point of view. This is all in my business plan before I spent $1. So he buys the comic to shut the kids up. Or, and I'll pick on the guys because they're the biggest sucker for this. They've left the kids at home and they're feeling guilty as hell. So it's guilt merch.
Does that work in relationships as well?
100%.
Can I buy a whole heap of it?
So truly, the 100% of my comic book business model at the very beginning of my independent comic industry was to sell comics to people who weren't comic people. I got no competition. I've got 100% of the market, and I can find my market, and my market's got money. So that's what started it. And then I got into the sci-fi stuff. My books, my prop building books, it's all the same universe. So people can actually jump from comics to novels to poetry. And I just took it that way to make it a sustainable income, to make it viable as a business model holistically. It's probably not enough money in independent comics if you want to eat the fancy 2-minute noodles. You have to branch that way.
They're called me Goring, but anyway.
Oh, bisa berbicara bahasa Indonesia, goreng bisa di sana.
Wow.
I should add, I was an Indonesian interpreter for many years, and I go to Indonesia a lot, and that's a big part of my market too. Because when you go there, and I'm like Hulk Hogan, it's like, and they go, this big, bule is a word which means fat, rich, dumb white guy.
It's also French for yum.
It's so they see the bule who, when I open my mouth, they're kind of like stunned, and while they're stunned, I take the money and give them a comic. Did you find that when you started out, that it was a strategic game of chess?
No.
So tell me about your economic strategy, and did that help you through your master's program? No, don't pass it off, no.
My master's program?
No, I'm just being silly.
All right.
So
No business plan for me. No.
What?
I heard about them.
So, as an economic refugee from Sydney, of which there are many, how did you build your business from, hey, I love doing comics, into the flourishing world that it is now, and the concept of taking your core business, which is what you love doing, which is comics, and building that out into something that's sustainable you can earn a living from?
I got an agent and started doing storyboards for ads. And that was my ticket out of the office job, which was designing Christmas brochures, Christmas catalogues. I worked for 3 Jewish guys that ran a Christmas company. No shit. And it was a bit like, it was like jail, and my ticket out, the tunnel out was being able to work from home and earning good money doing storyboards for ads.
They must have worked you really hard, because they would have been burning 7 candles at both ends.
I wish. The storyboard market died about as soon as I moved to the mountains, because the plan was, all right, honey, we're bankrupt, we're going to sell the house. But the good news is, for the money we make on selling our Inner West house, which we renovated on a budget of $0, we'll get a house in the mountains for cash, hopefully. So hence, that was the plan, and then I can afford to be an artist full time, right? So now I work in my backyard in my home-built studio, built out of pallets, and I'm very happy. But along the way, the storyboard plan didn't come through because the market collapsed thanks to the internet. So what used to be a fairly good, part-time income became almost zero thanks to freelancer.com and that kind of thing.
So the market collapsed courtesy of the internet. Hopefully, the internet collapses courtesy of the government. So this is a circle. I'm seeing a pattern here.
And we know the government's going to collapse.
Yeah, that's right.
But no matter who you vote for, the government always wins.
There you go.
Yeah, think about it. So moving through your business and dealing with a lot of those different challenges about your core business of drawing and creating comics, and then having the internet come through.